You're listening to the Monocle Daily, first broadcast on the 7th of July 2025 on Monocle Radio.
The Brics countries gather in Rio, but have any of them yet figured out what the alliance is for? The United States maybe starts to understand that Europe is less dispensable than it might have thought, and people are swimming in the river in Paris. What are they? Insane. I'm here all week, etc. I'm Andrew Muller. The Monocle Daily starts now. Hello and welcome to the Monocle Daily, coming to you from our studios here at Midori House in London. I'm Andrew Muller. My guests Evdoxia Limperi and Oscar Guardiola Rivera will discuss the day's big stories, and we'll find out why the Royal Academy of Music has joined the cultural march to London's east. Stay tuned, all that and more coming up right here on the Monocle Daily. This is the Monocle Daily. I'm Andrew Muller, and I am joined today by Evdoxia Limperi, UK correspondent for ERT, Hellenic Broadcasting Corp, and Oscar Guardiola Rivera, Professor in International Law and International Affairs at Birkbeck College. I think that's our two best-named daily panellists together. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Oscar, as we so often do when you're on the show, we do have to start with what you're wearing, which today is somewhat declarative, and I think what it is declarative of is either where you were at the weekend or where you wish you had been at the weekend.
I wished I was in Birmingham.
That's another first for the programme. Yeah.
I did try to get tickets for the Black Sabbath farewell, but no luck.
It wasn't just the Sabs, was it? It was quite the lineup of veteran headbangers doing quite short sets.
I mean, Tom Morello curating pretty much everybody I liked. It was, from Pantera to Metallica to Guns N' Roses. I should have been there, but there you go.
It does seem outrageous that you were. Do you have a particular Black Sabbath favourite album that you would commend our listeners
the
towards?
first ones. In fact, the first one is my favourite. It did change things.
You literally preferred their earlier work.
Yeah.
Evdoxia, you have recently been visiting Greece, which is not really that surprising a thing for you to have been doing, but which bit of it specifically did you go to?
Well, I went to many places. I went to Thessaloniki, to Chalkidiki, to Athens, to Kythnos and to Aegina.
One of those is an island which you believe is relatively unspoiled, and we're about to ruin it. We're about to ruin it. Which one is it?
Well, actually, technically, two of them are islands. It's Aegina and Kythnos, and it was my first time in Kythnos, and I was mesmerized. I fell in love with the island. I loved it. It's still quiet, but I was early June, so that makes sense as well. They told me that in August it's a different thing, but still unspoiled, although they told me that everything is sold and soon it won't have this appeal. As it has now.
It now strikes me that we've gone about this entirely the wrong way. What I should have set you up to say was I went to Kythonos. It is the worst place on earth. It is a vision of what hell will be like. Seriously, nobody should ever go.
Well, I can't lie, really.
I know
and there are 2,500 and over Greek islands. You can choose one.
Well, we will be starting in Rio de Janeiro, which is hosting the latest summit of the organisation known as Brics. It began as an informal association of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. In recent years, Brics has added Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran and the United Arab Emirates, but has stuck with the name Brics, possibly because insufficient numbers of their newer cohort start with a consonant to construct a coherent acronym. Seriously, I've worked on this all afternoon. There are just too many I's. Honestly, they can't process the prospective memberships of Nigeria, Thailand, Kazakhstan and Belarus fast enough. Oscar, let's start with Brics, or Brics EIUA
plus.
Yeah, exactly. Brics Plus is the other thing that they're trying to style it out as. Do we yet understand what it is? Is it actually really a thing in the way that we think of as, say, the G7 as a thing or ASEAN as a thing?
Well, the fact that Donald Trump is threatening those who are getting there might indicate that it is a thing. On the one hand, it is the sort of reimagination of an older history. You might recall, and listeners might recall, that in the second half of the 20th century, the non-aligned countries and the tricontinental did become a challenge to the conventions of the Cold War. So that on the one hand. On the other hand, the aim to try and become less dependent on the U.S. hold on finances and so on is, as Selsomedim Amorim puts it, a worthy cause, at least for the countries involved.
Evdoxia, Oscar rightly points out that President Trump has today been teeing off at Brics and threatening its members with various tariff-related punishments. But given that there obviously isn't a geographical thing holding them together, like, say, there is with ASEAN or Mercosur or whatever, does anything else actually appear to unite these countries other than a certain amount of grumpiness with the United States?
What else could that be? Other than the U.S., it's not only U.S. I think it's the EU as well. It's the Western coming together in different bodies like EU, like G7, like NATO. I mean, they seem stronger than these countries. They want to become stronger by getting together, and they have shared interest to do that. So it's not only the U.S., it's many other, but they are sporadically everywhere in the world. Different reasons, small and bigger. Get them together and unite them.
Let's look at this from the host's point of view, Oscar. What is actually in membership of Brics for Brazil? Brazil is obviously a colossally important country at a number of levels. It is vast. It has immense economic potential. It has, despite recent ructions, managed to cling on to its constitutional liberal democracy. Is it not unlikely or likely that Lula might look around the table and think, God, what kind of company are we keeping here?
There are indeed internal contradictions and differences between these countries. For Brazil, on the one hand, Brazil has always punched above its weight diplomatically, has a very strong history of multilateral diplomacy. In that idea, multilateralism is crucial for Brazil. On the other hand, because, of course, the United States has also a history of intervention in Latin America.
Indeed.
And in fact, this week, Trump coming out in defense of the indefensible Bolsonaro indicates precisely the why this is so important for Brazil and indeed for the entire south of the continent to keep the possibilities of other alliances, both in terms of trade and multilateral politics, is important given the history of Latin America-U.S. relations.
Evdoxia, though, isn't part of the membership, though, also an impediment to the organisation's stated aims? Like, they're talking about how they want to reform the UN Security Council because they want fairer representation for their members. They want the UN, the IMF, the World Bank to make adjustments in their favour. But if you're pushing for reforms like that, does it help your case if one of your founding members is Russia? Because then people can just say, why would we listen to what a rogue state wants?
Yeah, and surprisingly, maybe not so surprisingly, they didn't include Russia in their speak when they spoke out about what they do and what they want to do. So that makes the people keep some questions. Why and how do you have Russia in your this alliance, but not include what Russia does at the moment with the full scale invasion to Ukraine? Lula's statement resonates especially in Southern Europe. I mean, he has a point about the austerity, about the IMF comments, about the UN comments, but in particularly from the Southern Europe perspective, where austerity has been the lived experience for years, yes, it can resonate a lot. Publics do notice when defense budgets grow while health and education remain under strain. So this can resonate in some years, I mean, in Southern Europe, and maybe in more countries than the Southern Europe, can resonate, can have an impact, so to speak. But it's the Russia thing. It's the Russia thing in this alliance that nobody speaks of within the alliance that keep people, skeptical about it.
I just want to pick up finally on this one, on Oscar, on the relationship between Brazil and Russia, because I think a lot of people were quite surprised / disappointed by the attitude Lula took towards Ukraine, which was not, it was certainly short of the full-throated defence of Ukrainian independence and sovereignty that I think a lot of people were expecting. Where does that equivocation come from? Is that a hangover attached to the non-aligned movement, possibly quite reasonable Latin American suspicions of the United States, etc.?
Well, it is an equivocation. Many of the governments of Latin America have been equally critical of the Russia invasion of Ukraine, as well as what is happening in the occupied territories. And it is precisely the lack of, a reasonable and equal ethical measure in relation to those two cases what bothers many inside Brics. So again, rather than equivocation, I would say this is the entire opposite. It is very clear for many of these countries that whether, unless you are equally critical of the violations of international law in the two cases, going for one but not the other does not cut it.
But just to follow that up finally, Lula was iffy on Ukraine before October 7th, 2023.
Oh, absolutely, of course, precisely because the kinds of differences in treatment when it comes to a country like Russia vis-a-vis the West and others are seen as a sign, for a long time have been seen as a sign of an unequal standard being applied in different cases.
Well, to Greece now, which for the moment at least would appear to be an argument against the idea that the United States has lost interest in Europe, because in recent months the United States has greatly stepped up its use of military facilities in Greece, including the Souda Bay naval base on Crete and a similar establishment in Alexandropoli, both of which, as a glance at a map will confirm, are extremely handy for conducting or supporting operations across the Middle East and Eastern Europe. Aside from Greece's obviously crucial geographic location, Greece's Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis has been one of few European leaders of whom US President Donald Trump has consistently spoken reasonably favourably. Doxia, is there much discussion of this in Greece, especially attached to Mitsotakis' plans, which he has discussed on this very station a couple of times, to spend 25 billion euros on upgrading Greece's defence forces over the next 12 years? That is a lot of money for a relatively small country.
Absolutely, yes. And it was never small, the amount. Now it's 3.25% of the GDP of the country. And it's a lot. Yes, it's a lot. And the impact is everybody feels it in Greece. Greece has quietly become one of the most critical staging grounds for Nato in the Eastern Mediterranean, especially post-Ukraine invasion and with the Middle East tensions rising. Over the past few years, especially since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Greece has quietly emerged as one of NATO's most strategically valuable staging grounds in the Eastern Mediterranean. This hasn't happened with much fanfare in Greece, but the shift is significant in geopolitical terms. Greece offers stability in a volatile region, bordering both, as you said, Alexandroupoli on the north, and is where Greece strategically stands near the Red Sea. No, this is on the south, but near Ukraine on the Alexandroupoli port, and also with the Middle East and Northern Africa, and the value of a NATO-aligned, democratically governed state with deep water ports and favorable geography has only increased now with the tensions in the area. And both Washington, I would say, and Brussels have taken notice about this alliance. And I'd say Turkey has taken notice as well. There is a complexity in Greece's geopolitical position. There are a lot. It's a strategical position, but it has pressure from many, many different sides. That's why the alliances is not only with the U.S., but you have seen alliances with Israel as well, with the triple and Egypt as well. So yes, they try. Mitsotakis' government tries to strengthen his position, given the whole tension around them.
But just to follow that up briefly, the idea of this huge expenditure on Greece's defence forces, is that politically controversial in Greece? Are there any forces in Greek politics arguing, no, we shouldn't do this, we don't need to spend this much on our defence, etc.? Yeah,
well, it is, but only a little bit, I would say, given because, as I said, it's not something new. This has been happening for years and years. Greeks know, and they have felt in their skin the danger they face. Many times from Turkey as well. So from Athens' perspective, this deepening alliance is a double-edged sword. It's strategically reassuring, but it also places Greece in the front line. This is one of the things that are being talked about in Greece. From the Greek government's view, this growing military cooperation with the US and NATO brings both reassurance and risk. On one hand, it affirms Greece's role as a key ally, a pillar, so to speak, of Western defense strategy in the region. But it also brings investment, infrastructure, upgrades, political capital. But on the other hand, it places Greece closer to the front lines of multiple overlapping crises, from Ukraine to the Eastern Mediterranean and now the Middle East.
Earlier this year, Oscar, Mitsotakis did say, and I quote, "Europe cannot pretend it is a herbivore in the midst of carnivores." Is he wrong about that?
No, he's not wrong. But then again, when you're surrounded by carnivores, the danger is you become one yourself, or you are placed in the first line. Some friends of mine from Greece, who are more knowledgeable of these things than I am, did point out to me in a conversation recently that in a country where so many social needs are stark, the decision to spend so much money in defense is controversial, perhaps even problematic. That is a point that is being made not just in Greece, but also in other southern European countries. Take Spain, for instance, who has been perhaps more clearer in saying that this pivot towards defense is problematic.
I mean, just as a final thought on this one, Evdoxia, does this, or at least can Europe hope that the United States, realising, for example, how useful these two Greek facilities are at a moment of crisis, might sort of eventually bring it home to President Trump that actually it turns out the United States does need Europe?
how can anyone answer
We're both smiling.
about Donald Trump and how EU will react to his? No. I can't really answer that. I don't know. It's the honest. It's so perplexed. I mean, you can never tell what Donald Trump's next move will be. And he said one thing, he did another. It strengthens EU's eastern southern borders, that's for sure. Suda Bay port and Alexandroupoli port are big assets of Greece and EU extendably, because it's a member of NATO's as well. But when it comes to Donald Trump, honestly, yeah.
And it's not just him. I mean, there are analysts have noted there is a growing faction in the Pentagon pushing for a reduced involvement in conflicts such as Ukraine, pivoting towards the Indo-Pacific. If that is the case, then perhaps one might surmise that those closer to Trump are thinking, well, should we keep our investment in Europe or perhaps take it elsewhere? Now, perhaps even given the position of Greece in that respect, it might play towards that equation. But the rest of Europe, I'm not so sure.
Well, to UK airports generally now, and the news that if you have recently had an oversized cabin bag relocated to the hold and been stung for the privilege, you may have earned somebody £1.20. This, it emerges, is the bounty on offer to employees of passenger gate operator Swissport for every passenger they spot attempting to board with an oversized bag. Another similar firm, DHL Supply Chain, operates a similar scheme. Passengers who get oversized cabin bags confiscated at the gate by EasyJet for EG can be charged £48, almost certainly more than they paid for the flight. A show of hands around the table. Have either of you ever been caught out like this, travelling on a budget airline and had to shell out for excess baggage because you were trying to smuggle something too big on as cabin baggage?
I have.
You have? Okay, I haven't.
What happened? What did you get caught with?
I paid for a suitcase, for an extra suitcase, and I gave it back to the plane. That's all that happened. But it's frustrating. I thought it was fitting, but it wasn't. That's what happened. It's crazy. It's starting to feel like airport staff are bounty hunters now.
Well, they literally are. Apparently.
They are. Which is why we had a European court ruling trying to control or deter these airlines from exploiting passengers. Not that they have really made much. They're not listening that much. Now, having said that, Ryanair has changed its cabin baggage rule in lieu of the coming into force of new regulations from the European Union. But I must also have to say I find it difficult to find sympathy for those traveling in Ryanair and Easy. That's just the problem when you have family in Spain and you see the hordes descending to the Canaries. But that's just me.
See, I have.
No, it's not only you. Sorry.
Thank you.
See, I have views on cabin baggage then, which may put me at odds with the rest of the table, because I think basically people should be allowed to take a book. And beyond that, check it in. I don't understand where this thing comes from of people getting on flights and bringing their entire worldly possessions into the cabin with them.
No, sure, but of course the problem has to do with how much people are being charged for putting your bag on hold and so on and so forth. The whole model is incredibly problematic. It's
insane what they charge for giving that's why the people take them up on the plane, which is, again, I'm with you. But they have to reduce the charges, or else may make the ticket charges more and have the suitcase for free, or find a more decent, a more honest way to do it. And consider the people that are traveling. It's not only about the profits. It tells you something when the EU is moving to protect passengers, but airports are still incentivizing surveillance over service. It's not ethical, is it?
Oh, it's not nice.
Well, there is this thing, Oscar, where last month, as I think you were alluding to, European Parliament voted to give passengers the right to an extra piece of free hand luggage weighing up to 7 kilograms. But my thing is, who needs 7 kilograms of stuff in the cabin?
What do you put in there? No, I'm with you on that one. I'm not sure what people put in the bags, but also I feel for flight attendants. I've seen a few carfuffles and problems.
Fuffles?
Yeah, I've seen a few cases in which these guys are trying to enforce the rules, and of course a drunken passenger wouldn't have it.
Well,
it puts them in danger.
To Paris now, where for the first time in more than a century, people are swimming legally in the river. Taking to the Seine is now permitted in designated areas, among the most picturesque being locations with a view of the Eiffel Tower. This has been made possible by a 1.4 billion euro clean-up operation attached to last summer's Olympics, and officials claim that the water does now meet European quality standards. Somewhat depriving swimmers of any insouciant Parisian cool, it is compulsory to tie a bright yellow life buoy around one's waist. They could surely at least have come up with life jackets in blue and white stripes with a collar fashioned to resemble a string of onions, and perhaps inflatable accordions. Evdoxia, you have doubtless swum in the Mediterranean from Greek beaches many times. Is river swimming an option anywhere in Greece? Have you ever tried any such thing?
Oh, we have lovely, lovely rivers, and very, very clean one. Not like Seine or Thames. But in the mountains.
Now you're just showing off. In the mountains.
Yes. Well, I can show off because I have tried them, yeah. And I know we have, yes, in the mountains, not in the cities. 2 old rivers we had in Athens do not exist anymore, Ilissos and Kifissos. And in Thessaloniki, there's no such thing in the city. There are some out of the city, but again, I don't think people swim there. So I wouldn't swim in the Seine.
Well, people are, and as far as I can tell, they seem to be surviving the experience. I swam in rivers in various jurisdictions in Australia when I was a kid, but you do have to be very careful, obviously, because rivers and the surrounding banks in Australia are absolutely infested with things that want to kill you. But by and large, again, most of us make it to adulthood. Is this a thing in Colombia?
Well, same here. I have swum in the Magdalena River, but you have to watch for the caimans. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And up in the mountains. In fact, I've swum in rivers here, in the River Thames near Oxford. You can do it. There are places where you can do it, but you have to be careful.
Did you subsequently write an insufferable article for The Guardian about it, which I believe is compulsory when swimming?
I was too ill to do so. No, I'm joking.
But Evdoxia,
yeah.
Is this a thing that was worth doing? I mean, 1.4 billion euros is a lot of money, obviously, but in terms of as governments try to find ways to interest the public in climate mitigation, in environmental protections, is this a good way of saying, look, this is what can be done? This is a demonstrable transformation. Swimming in the Seine 10, 20 years ago would have been a ticket to hospital, whereas now it's a pleasant afternoon out. We can make things better.
Yeah. Well, first of all, before I say that, it is public policy. It's not only a poetic metaphor, this one. And in the bigger context of climate change, it can be some solution for people in the city, right? When the weather becomes very, very hot, as we have seen, it goes over 40s in Paris and in Athens and in southern Europe. But I have to say, it's I learned from my colleagues in Paris that it's a lot of PR thing, or the whole thing of swimming in the Seine. Last year, the the mayor,
Madame Hidalgo, had a
yes,
bad experience.
when the contamination was highly up in the reds, in the red readings, and now it never happened. My colleague says because something happened, they closed it, and so it's a lot of PR. It's not real, and it's about politics, but it is a good public policy that I wish it will happen and maybe inspire people here as well.
Risking the wrath of the Parisians.
But how clean would you want the Thames to be demonstrated to be, Oscar, before you went in it again? If a beachhead was set up somewhere along the embankment? It's not impossible.
It's not impossible, and it would be wonderful. Actually, it would be a very nice investment. Not just the River Thames. There are so many places. The Lido in Hampstead. Mm-hmm. So many people use it. It's so important. These are some of the last spaces for socialization and community building left in the city. That needs more policy and more investment, no doubt.
Indeed. Yes.
Evdoxia Lemperi and Oscar Guardiola Rivera, thank you both for joining us. Finally, on today's show, major cultural institutions are finding themselves more and more in London's increasingly redeveloped East End, starting with Sadler's Wells Theatre, V&A East Storehouse, and most recently the Royal Academy of Music, which has announced a new campus based on London's City Island. Monocle's Henry King spoke with Zach Proctor, cultural communications specialist, who advised on the V&A East Storehouse project and lecturer on creative industries at the University of Arts London, to find out more.
It's really exciting news, first of all, that the Royal Academy of Music is unveiling its new outpost in East London. The Academy is not moving its operation and nor currently planning to increase its intake of students. But actually, this new location will create supplementary space for its growing, widening participation initiatives. And I think that feels really in keeping with the spirit of the East Bank and this growing, emerging cultural quarter.
And the main campus for the Royal Academy of Music will remain in Marylebone, as you said. It's just around the corner from our London studios. They're moving into London City Island, currently home to the English National Ballet and the London Film School. With dance, film and now music, East London really is going big on arts and culture.
It is. And I think what's so special about the East Bank is that it is this unique collaboration between world-leading universities, arts and cultural institutions, that is creating opportunities both for the local community, but for everyone who visits, lives and works in East London. So already in the East Bank itself, London College of Fashion, UAL, UCL, they're already open for students. The V&A East Museum will open in spring next year, and then the BBC Music Studios in late 2026. And earlier this year, we saw two really, really exciting openings, which was Sadler's Wells East and then the V&A East Storehouse. And I think kicking off the year with Sadler's Wells, this project had the goal of finding new audiences for contemporary dance in an area of London, and particularly in the UK, actually, that's not traditionally well served by arts venues. And I think there's huge potential in what the Academy is doing here. And I think that what is really pushing this, as you say, and is that investment. And London's Mayor Sadiq Khan has been a really vocal advocate for this development of projects like V&A East Storehouse, but the East Bank and East London more broadly. And it's the biggest cultural education investment actually in London in 150 years.
And we've seen AOC Architecture has been awarded this Royal Academy of Music build. In terms of placemaking, what's going into the design considerations for these kind of projects? Is there a particular style of architecture that's specific to East London? Or do these top studios working on redevelopment projects take different ideas from across America and Europe and further afield?
Well, I think, as you say, it's pulling from lots of different places. And I think that again, is in very keeping with the spirit of East London and what the East Bank is all about. As you say, AOC Architecture, I mean, a renowned practice, have worked on projects like the Young V&A in Bethnal Green, the National Archives in Kew, and Somerset House Studios. So sort of huge cultural projects, but ones that are also very public facing. And I think that's really key here. But the V&A Storehouse, for example, designed by Dilys Scofidio and Renfro, and I'm in New York right now, and I've been walking along the High Line. It's fantastic to see those parallels and the shed. And I think, the institutions here are putting their faith in creatives who understand what it means to build cultural space and to completely rethink the notion of access. Sadler's Wells East, for example, designed by O'Donnell and Toomey, a fantastic Irish architecture practice. When you go into the entrance, they've absolutely designed it so it is totally different to anything you've seen before when you enter a ballet institution. And I think it's one of the first, as you walk up from Stratford Station, for example, it's one of the first institutions that you walk past. And they've worked with some incredible artists in that entryway on some tapestry work, which I think is so in keeping with the welcome and the idea that anybody can walk in. And this is not a place where there are barriers to getting over the threshold.
And you're in New York at the moment, obviously a bustling metropolitan city and cultural hotspot, but are there specific sites in cities across the world that are doing as well as East London in creating these new creative hubs?
I'm also just fresh off a plane from Copenhagen for 3 days of design as well, which is just a fantastic week of everything, all of the best in art and design. I know the Monocle team's been out there too. But I actually think, the Nordhavn district, for example, is somewhere that is really emerging. And again, what I enjoy to see in urban development is this kind of transformation of space that was once purpose-built for something. Like, for example, I would point to Canary Wharf, and it was London's business district. And I think that the transformation that we see right now with the urban greening, I mean, Eden Dock is a project that was recently completed by HGA Design, a fantastic architecture practice, who have totally reimagined what it means to be in a business district. We're creating new districts that have all of the ingredients that they need to succeed. I think the Nordhavn district, for example, which is bringing residential, it does have that food and cafe culture that is so synonymous with Copenhagen itself, but it's got the space for water. And when I was just there last week, there was just an absolute plethora of people all out on the dock and jumping in and splashing. And I think that's when a district is really brought to life.
That was Monocle's Henry King speaking with Zach Proctor, the Cultural Communications Specialist and Lecturer on the Creative Industries at the University of Arts London. For more on cities, including our special on the V&A East Storehouse, check out Monocle's The Urbanist. That's all for this edition of The Daily. Thanks to our panellists today, Evdoxia Limperi and Oscar Guardiola Rivera. Today's show was produced by Monica Lillis and researched by Henry King. Our sound engineer was Elliot Greenfield. I'm Andrew Muller here in London. The Daily is back at the same time tomorrow. Thanks for listening.